So now that the smoke from the last election is clearing and Donald Trump is gone, the Republican Party has to figure out what it is and what it should be. Is it going to be the GOP of 2006, foreign wars plus corporate tax cuts, the party of John Boehner and Liz Cheney? It's what it's been for a long time. Or will it become, or is it already, something very different from that, something new and potentially much broader than what it was? That's the question. Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana has thought a lot about it. Banks released a memo this week that seems to answer that question conclusively. The Republican Party, he writes, is no longer an arm of the Chamber of Commerce. In fact, it is already the party of the American middle class. And we know that because they're its voters. Consider these numbers. 79% of mechanics who gave in the last election gave to the Republican, Donald Trump. So did 60% of small business owners and 59% of custodians to the Republican Party. When was the last time the Republican Party won janitors? Probably been 100 years at least. The Democratic Party, meanwhile, has now solidified its position as the party of entrenched power. 94% of college professors gave to Joe Biden. So much for diversity on campus. So did 73% of bankers. And that's a remarkable change. As recently as 2012, Wall Street donors gave more than 3 times as much to the Republican as they did to the Democrat. It was the party of Wall Street for generations, but it isn't anymore. Last year, Joe Biden took in 4 times as much from the finance establishment as Donald Trump did. Now, Congressman Banks calls this a paradigm reversal, and he's absolutely right about that. It's likely permanent. Huge groups of people have changed how they vote. So how should the Republican Party respond to these facts? And they are facts. Well, for starters, how about stop sucking up to the people who hate you? Corporate America has gone mostly hard left, so stop doing their bidding. Don't help the people who want to hurt you. And then when you get a minute, start representing and defending your own voters. Find the people who vote for you and do something for them. The issues aren't complicated. We know what they're interested in. Control the border, demand fair trade deals, fight the power of big tech, stand up for small business. And as you do all this, denounce wokeness as the moral atrocity that it is. Wokeness, Banks writes, was cooked up by college professors, then boosted by corporations. Of course it was. And that's why normal people hate it. All normal people, no matter what they look like. Consider this, quote, Hispanic and especially African-American voters are even more put off by Democratic efforts to redefine sex than your average voter. Hispanic and African-American voters oppose the Equality Act by 10 and 5 more points than the average voter does. And amazingly, 42% of Hispanic Biden voters have a negative opinion of the Black Lives Matter movement and their opposition to the nuclear family and their support for defunding the police. Compare that to just 6% of white Biden voters. Get it? Not everyone is for this stuff. Most people aren't, and it doesn't break along racial lines at all. The memo goes on like this. It's fascinating, and you ought to read it. Banks ends on a hopeful note. He ends this way, quote, the Democratic Party today is more vulnerable than it's ever been in modern history. The Democrats' agenda is now shaped entirely by corporate interests and radical elite cultural mores, but they still rely on many blue-collar voters. That is not sustainable. It can't continue. Quote, Democrats will keep alienating working-class voters because that's what their donors demand. And Republicans should welcome those voters with open arms by fully embracing an agenda that is worthy of their support. End quote. Amen. It is not complicated.